Hey everybody, this is Eric from Eric's Edge, and I'm finally getting back into the HyperCard Authoring and Programming course. This is the second module in the series, and we're going to talk about authoring stacks. So when you author stacks, you're combining card backgrounds, fields, and buttons in meaningful ways that you can use to build an application that serves your purposes. HyperCard is a rapid development environment that has a graphical user interface and a programming language behind it, and it offers you fundamental building tools that you need for authoring. Now, we call it authoring because you're doing more than just programming. You're building an application from the front end back. So when you've finished part 2 of this course, you'll understand the basics of creating applications. So one of the things that we're going to have to look at is the screen size. Macintoshes come in different flavors and you have different screen sizes. HyperCard can also be tailored to fit different screen sizes. Now the default stack size is the one I'm using here, which is a 512 by 342 pixel card. And if you stick to this size of card for your HyperCard stack, it'll run on a classic Macintosh as well as any of the newer ones, because a classic Macintosh, it'll fit on that screen. I recommend that unless you're really doing something that's going to require a more modern Macintosh, that you stick with the 512 by 342. So, but on a larger screen, it'll be a window like it is here. And when you're authoring stacks, I recommend using a larger window than what you get on a classic, because it makes it easier to manipulate things. You can, for example, and we'll go over this later, you can pull off the tools menu and drag it to the side and use that to edit the screen without having to go over to the tools menu and pull it down every time. You can also, if you're using the painting tools, you can pull the patterns down. And there are other menus that are available. They're called palettes, and we'll go over those. Okay. So accessing the authoring tools, you might remember the preferences card in the home stack. So in that you can set the level for user access, and typically if you're authoring and you're creating stacks, you're going to do it at the scripting level so that you don't have to change it again. It gives you all the levels of authoring so that you don't have to worry about going back and editing the screen. With HyperTalk, you can create stack-specific menus. For example, the home menu in the home stack and the utilities menu in the address stack are custom menus. And you would set the preferences level for a user so that you could manage that. When you start building HyperCard stack applications using HyperTalk, then we'll design menus to make it easier for the users to use your stack. So HyperCard has several palettes and windows that you can use to help you with authoring. And you can drag them away from the menu bar so that you can use them, like we did with the tools palette here and the patterns palette. But there's also some extra ones that you can use. There's a scroll window, and this is a tool that helps you with scrolling if you're editing a stack that has a card size that's larger than your window. You can do it. It's a little tedious, but there is a scroll window you can use to scroll around the card so that you can edit things. There's also a nav window that's got some really useful tools in it, and we'll cover this later. So there are really two types of stacks, or two different paradigms that you follow when you're creating stacks. And it really depends on the type of stack that you're doing. They're known as homogeneous and heterogeneous stacks. So homogeneous stacks are stacks that consist of a single background that's shared between all the cards in the stack. Think of a stack that is an address book, or maybe it's your media library. It's going to have the same card multiple times, and each card would be that particular piece of medium, that CD or that movie or whatever. So the information on the card changes, but the cards remain the same in the stack. Heterogeneous stacks, however, they contain multiple backgrounds and different combinations of cards in a single stack. So instead of an application that is, an address book where every card is the same, you might have a configuration card, and then have a card that is for a game board or something like that, and then you'd have another card that has your statistics for wins and losses. You could use the Wordle stack that I developed and demonstrate in another video as an example of a heterogeneous stack. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to create a new stack. And there are a number of stack templates that you can use that make creating a stack very simple. Most of these template stacks have background graphics and buttons and fields already there. In fact, if you were going to create something similar to an address stack but for a different purpose, you might start with the address stack and modify it. But there are several steps that you take to create a new stack, and let's go ahead and try that. So first, you've got to be sure you have the scripting level. As I said before, it's best just to keep it in the scripting level. It makes it easier to do things. And then you go to the stack, template stack, and you can select a template. And then from the file menu, you create a new stack. So I've got a button here that I've programmed that'll take us to the stack templates. So let's click on that. You've got several to pick from here. There's a time log, a cassette labeler. It actually can print out cassette labels, a music library, weekly expenses, things like that. So let's just pick one. Let's do the cassette labeler because that's kind of fun. All right, so this shows you what that stack looks like, and then it's got this little tool that will take you back to templates. You could navigate back to the home stack, the ideas stack, or you could go previous or next. So you'll notice that there's already a sample in here of what would be on your cassette. And so let's create a stack. And we're going to put it in the HyperCard authoring thing, and we're going to give this a name. We're going to call it My Cassette Labeler. Going to save it. All right, and you notice you've got a new stack now called Cassette Labeler. No data in it. There's no next tab or anything. You could create a new one. You can sort them. You can find a particular cassette label, and you can print that label. So it does have some functionality in it. So if we created a cassette, My Awesome Tunes, Tune Awesome, another awesome tune, so that's on side A, and side B. Yeah, so we looks like there. Let's make this another one. More awesome tunes, yet again another tune. And side B is just more of the same. This is number one. I've never used this stack before, so it makes it interesting. I'm not sure. This must be the reverse side of the label. My awesome tunes with your favorite tunes, whatever. Okay, new. So now we're on a new one. If I go back, I'm at the one that I created. This is the blank one. So now you've got a stack. How do you use your new stack? Well, HyperCard is set up so that if you create a stack, or even you know, maybe you import a stack or download a stack, you could use your home stack as sort of an index for being able to go to these stacks. You can use the Finder and just open the stack that way, and that's typically what I do, but you know, maybe you want to stick to just using HyperCard for these things. Let's go to the home stack, and we're going to do this here. So I'm going to go home. Now, card 3, it's a place you could add your own buttons, right? So now we're on the home card. There is a custom menu for the home stack that has new link to stack in it. So if we create a new link to a stack, it brings up a dialog so that you can find your stack. And here's my cassette labeler. Click open, and it adds a button that you can, of course I clicked on it so it just left it where I had it. Let's create another one. New link to stack, because you can create multiple ones. Let's add our HyperCard authoring course. Okay, while it's flashing, you can move it around and then drop it where you want it. Now, there are ways that you can manipulate this as well. You could go to the button tool, and now I could move it around. But they try to give you a mechanism for doing it where you don't really need to know how to use the tools. You just use the browse tool. So let's do another one. Home, new link to stack, HyperCard part 1. So we're going to add that. You could also link to a document or to an application. We'll cover this more later, but I just want to create these here so that they're in the home stack. New link to stack. Open. So I've already written some of the future courses, as you can see. Open. And I'm going to move things around, so I'm going to go use the button tool. And I'm going to rearrange things a little bit. Because I'm very picky about this kind of thing. In there. Tools. Browser tools. So now you can click on these and it'll take you to that stack. So let's go back to the course. Now it brings you to the first page. It does not remember that I was on another page. Let's get back there. Alright, there you go. That's how you could very easily add a button that takes you to your new stack. Stack card sizes. Alright, when you create a new stack, you should decide what card size you want. Like I mentioned before, you could have different ones. I stick with the smaller size. You can actually make much smaller cards so that you could do, you know, like some kind of a widget, palette control kind of a thing. Anyway, but you can resize an existing stack from the stack info. So if we go up here, go to objects stack info. You see it says card size 512 by 342. I can resize it to a different one. Classic is what we're in. There's small, PowerBook, large, Mac Paint, window, and then you could do custom ones. Anyway, and in the custom one you drag it to set the size. So let's go to stack info, resize, and grab this and make it some custom thing. Well, we're not going to change it, so let's leave it alone. All right. Standard card sizes. So the small card size, 416 by 240, is for smaller than a classic Macintosh screen. There's many reasons why you might want to do that. I can't think of any at the moment, other than creating some kind of a tool and you need to have the rest of the screen visible. Classic, like I said before, is your classic Macintosh screen size. PowerBook is a 640 by 400. Large, the Apple RGB external monitor, is a 640 by 480 format that us old timers are used to using. Mac Paint, the size of a Mac Paint document. And then you could do a whatever the current stacks, the size of the current stacks window. You can fill the entire screen up to 1280 by 1280. And then, again, the custom one, you can go down as small as 64 by 64 to do some kind of little applet or something. And it is limited by the amount of memory you have. Stack size. Okay, in the stack dialog, you can see what the size of your stack is right now. So let's go do that. Stack info. So the size of the stack is 42K and there's 13K free. As you work in HyperCard, it saves the stack. It has a little bit of free working space to make it more efficient to do it. If you compact the stack, so if we compact the stack, what it's doing is creating a new copy of the stack and then opening that, renamed as the original stack name. And we go into stack info again. You'll see there's 0K free. And if we make any changes, it would add some free space. Compacting a stack, discovered this. So one of the things you want to make sure that you do, even though HyperCard's pretty good about saving your changes as you go, I frequently compact my stack. They suggest, once a week you do it. If it's something that you're using a lot, say you were doing, you had an application stack that you used every day, you might want to compact it every day then. Just do it frequently because it will, if there happens to be something that's corrupted in there, it'll try to recover from it. It's a pretty good idea just to make sure that you can do that. You could also make a copy. You could save a copy of your stack. So if you're unsure, say you're doing a bunch of programming and you want to make sure that you don't mess something up, you could save a copy of it. I do that frequently. Okay, protecting a stack. You can also, as a stack author, protect your stack to prevent other users from modifying or deleting or reading the scripts in the stack or something, so you can treat it like an application. There are a lot of tools that allow you to break stack protection, so there really isn't much point in it. But if you did have something like a kiosk application or something like that and you didn't want people messing around with, I would protect the stack just to make sure that they don't accidentally do something. You can set it to can't modify a stack. So if you check this off and you make your stack read-only for users, even if the user level set to scripting, the user will still only be able to browse the stack. Not sure how much utility that has, but you can do it. Can't delete stack. Believe it or not, someone could accidentally delete a stack and then you'd lose it. So this helps to prevent that. Can't abort. This one is a tricky one. You don't really want to do this. If you press Command period while HyperCard is busy doing something, trying to print or trying to do a find in a stack, it'll stop it from executing that. If you do can't abort, it keeps you from being able to do that, but now you've created a situation where somebody could have a stack that goes wild because it's corrupt or something, and you have to turn your machine off and on. So you don't really want to do that. Can't peek. This is, you remember there's a trick for viewing the buttons. So if you do Command, Option, and Shift, it shows you the fields. If it's Command Option, it shows you the buttons. Well, you could turn that off so people can't peek at it. And then user level buttons. You can set the user level with a set of radio buttons in the dialog for this stack alone. If you set the level to browser or typing level, protect stack menu item is no longer available in the file menu, and there's a way of getting back into a protected stack if you set it up that way. You can prevent users from accessing the protect stack dialog by setting a password. You click the set password button in the protect stack dialog, and you're asked to enter a password, and the password's not case sensitive. Don't forget that password, because once you set it, then you're going to have to use some tools to try to break the password. Private access. You can keep casual users from accessing a stack to keep it private. The protect stack dialog has a checkbox called private access, and when it's set, when the stack is first opened by a user, they are prompted for the password that was set, and it limits access to a project stack. Once the user enters the correct password, they are able to choose and close and open the stack without being prompted again. More protection. The determined user is always going to be able to bypass HyperCard's built-in protection. There's a bunch of tools and things that you can download that'll let you do it. An additional level of protection is to save a copy of your stack as an application, and we'll cover them in a future module. It's going to be more of if you're a programmer and you're setting up a stack for sale and you want it to be an application and not a HyperCard application necessarily, someone could just download it, install it, use it, that kind of thing. And that is it for this part of authoring. So we will continue forward with the next module, part 3. So, Eric's Edge, HyperCard Authoring and Programming. I'm Eric Miller, and I'd like to thank you for joining me in this module. We will cover the next module soon, which will get into actually the steps that you take and the structure for a card and the different layers between the background and the card, buttons, fields, all of that, so that you can start building stacks on your own. You can find me on YouTube on this channel, Eric's Edge Videos. I'm also available on Twitter at Eric John Miller. I have a Patreon if you care to contribute to that, and you can find me on patreon.com at Eric's Edge. And I also have a blog. It's not very frequently updated, but occasionally I do put a lot of details into how to do something, and it's pragmaticpizza.blogspot.com. Thank you for joining, and I will see you in the next video.